Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to have with me today Juliana Heng, a marvelous poet, actress, comedienne, known across the globe as a wit and as a fine writer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome this fine young lady with me. Juliana, I'm so pleased you could join us.
Thank you so much, Richard, for having me.
You know, I know you in a couple of your different disguises, but I don't have anywhere near the appreciation of the grand artist that you are. So right now, I was wondering if we could start off. Talk to me about the young Juliana. When did you find yourself drawn to the creative arts, whether it be painting or drawing or writing? Talk about young Juliana. When did you start to become a creator?
That is a very good question. I think my first artistic attempt is to actually give people handmade cards because, yeah, I mean, people have birthdays and all, but as a kid, I'm not well off. So what I did was I have paper, I have color pencils, and that is what I did. I just draw the cards and then just write my greeting and then just give it to my friend, family. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yep.
So you started doing this when you were a young child.
Yes, that was my first venture into creativity because this is like, if let's say you were to say art is broad-based, it's not just speaking. So I think my spark of creativity started with making handmade cards.
Wonderful, wonderful. So then, as you were going to school, did you find yourself drawn to become a young writer, or were you just an avid reader, or somewhere in the middle?
I was an avid reader. I read a lot of Annette Blyton book. Yeah, so I read a lot of that. And after that, I proceeded to read like Agatha Christie, yeah, Nancy Drew. So there's quite a lot of books that I read. And until today, reading has been a habit that follows me. I read every day. And I think I actually read a bit more during the lockdown because when you are cooped up at home, the only way you keep yourself sane is to read, and from there I find a lot of joy just reading. And because when after you read, that's when you start to have your thoughts, and that's when you attempt to write. Yeah, so I think every good writer usually have a good habit with reading first. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind me asking, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, did you live close to the coast, or were you more inland in the mountains? Talk about that young Juliana.
Is definitely inland and also in the suburbs, I would say. So I'm not really in the city, which is great because the city can be quite congested. So in the suburbs, at least I'm still like, there's still space and then you can still breathe some fresh air, and it's still convenient. It's not the village because village will be different again. But of course, I would love to see the beach. And if let's say I were to go up to northern Malaysia, yes, there is a beach because there's an island state, northern Malaysia. But that takes me 4 hours to get there. So normally we will go to the nearest, which is I think about 45 minutes to 1 hour southwest, yeah, to see the beach. But for me, it's like, I mean, as a child, yes, I mean, maybe we have the time, but nowadays, no, I don't have the time. So I have to just like find my own sea, the kind of stuff to see. Yeah.
So, okay, my next question usually is, did you play music, or do you listen to music? What kind of music do you like to listen to?
I used to play the piano.
Oh, how nice. How nice.
Yes. So when I was 9 years old, I started playing all the way until 17. So at that time, it was very intensive because I'm studying for exams and all the very intense piano exams and all. So I think that is like my craft at the finest. But after that, because being a bit of a rebel, I don't really like the conventional way of doing music. So I'm like, okay, I just drop it back. But the thing is, I may actually slowly come back. And then because the thing is, people say that music is something that you can never forget entirely. although I have left
Absolutely.
it for almost like 10 over years. But then if I do come back, you never know, I might just suddenly pick back up again. It's just that when I left school and then started working and eventually moved here and there, you won't have the mind space to really like play the piano. Yeah.
Yeah. I had uh, started playing trumpet very, very early, and I
Hmm.
took it very, very seriously. I was a real music focused young person. I was a classical music snob. I
Wow.
listened to classical music, Bach, Beethoven,
Yes.
Mozart, and to me, I had an attitude about pop music. I didn't listen to pop music. And
Hmm.
then later, in my early teen years, I developed an interest in jazz. And so I became a jazz fanatic and only listened to jazz and classical. That's all I would listen to. And it wasn't until literally my final high school year that I paid any attention at all to rock music. It was not my cup of tea. But what ultimately appealed to me both was on the music side, the some of the better rock composers. I like that. I like the classical style of rock. That appealed to me. And then as a writer, some of the poets of rock really spoke to me. I'm thinking of Jim Morrison, The Doors, and that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So later, after leaving school, I had a small guerrilla theater group, and we would recite from Jim Morrison's poetry as we
Wow.
went through the city and made people upset. So, okay, now you're a young woman, you're going to school. When did you start to feel that writing was going to be important to you?
For me, I started to write poetry. I mean, like just a random poetry when I'm sad, I'm lonely. You know, sometimes you just need an outlet. So that's when
Yeah,
I just write. But being a rebel, I also don't like to rhyme. Yeah, so I would just write whatever. But the thing is, because I have a bit of a music training, so the musical ear actually helps me to like to know how like even a poem they have 5 7 syllables. There are times I just write but without counting the syllables. But when I kind of do a double check on it, like to just check whether there's a syllable tie, it follows a 5 7 timing. It doesn't have like I did not intentionally write with the timing in mind, but because of the way my mind is trained, so that's how I managed to have that nice timing when it comes to writing poetry. So, but the thing is, it's a very good outlet because poetry is actually something that you can even when in my handmade gift, there are times I just write some random poetry and then just give to that person, and it kind of looks like a glorified greeting, you know, rather than just say happy birthday and all the best in everything you do. You put it into a nice poetry, and then it looks very well packaged for some reason. Yeah.
absolutely. I personally like to write my own cards, create my own birthday cards or greeting cards or
Yeah.
whatever. I find so little of commercial cards speak to
Yeah.
what I want to say. So
Yes.
I
And
like to create my own.
yep, it's much more personalized. Yeah.
I think so. I think so too. And you know, some of us are both graphics and words, so it does both things for us.
Yep.
Okay, so I understand that in addition to poetry, you also write some comedy and perform
Yes.
comedy as well. You want to talk a little bit about your comedy work?
Sure. So I started comedy in 2015 September. So, but the thing is that time I mean I tried a couple of times, but it just didn't the bug just didn't come up to me. So I just did a few times. I felt that no, I don't think it's really my thing. But that time I was also having quite a challenging family situation where I just left home, and it is quite hard to actually curate stuff and just go up there and talk about it when you are still in the midst of handling your personal storm. Yeah.
Sure,
So
sure.
so I actually did all kinds of odd jobs just to get by.
Oh
And
yeah.
then after that, only like 2 years later, only I came back to do like comedy. And until now, I haven't stopped comedy. So it's been kind to me. So
Very
I started
good.
Yeah, so I'm actually enjoying the journey very much because comedy, it also allows me to actually find out who I am. It dig deep. Yeah, I think that is very important. But then being someone on the spectrum, comedy is not easy because
No.
it relies a lot on spontaneity and also reading the social cue from the audience, which I'm still figuring out how to do that. So it can be very challenging for me. So there are times I actually thought of giving up because it's like I kind of think. I mean, we all have an inner critic who can be very
Sure.
harsh and say, "Oh, you are on the spectrum. You just don't have what it takes to do comedy. You better just go back to your day job as an accountant." Yeah, and it's like, but for me, it's because I'm also a rebel. It's a funny combination. So I being a rebel, I go against the grain. So if let's say you tell me not to do something, I will do it. So that's why I always like tell people, like, I mean, this is what I tell inside myself, but I never want to tell the other person. Sometimes like when some even when I like learn singing or learn whatever, if the teacher actually dare to tell me that, Juliana, you don't have potential in this, I am going to do it. Not really to, I think not just to prove you wrong, but also to satisfy
Right.
myself that I can do it. So I
Good for
decided to
you.
go against the grain, and then I just work my way through comedy. But then I do take a short holiday from time to time from comedy because there are times you get burnout as well. So that's when I went into poetry. I mean, we discovered my love for spoken word poetry. While on break on my comedy, after like almost 2 years in, I got a minor burnout. And that's when I write poetry, and it gives me a new revelation of how I can approach my comedy as well. Because poetry allows you to dive very deep, allows you to dive deep, um, and you are not fear of judgment. Because oftentimes comedy, unfortunately, a lot of times because we really hang our value lah, our own value on the audience reaction, on the audience laughter. So when we didn't get the laughter we want or the reaction we want, we get very devastated. But poetry, it doesn't matter. It's like you just write your stuff, you share it with people, and if they resonate, they will just snap. But if they don't, it is fine. It's like the judgment, there's not much of stake, which is why it allows me to dive really deep to perform. And from there, I actually found like, hey, you know what I discovered in poetry are actually very useful in comedy because a lot of things are interlinked. It's like a lot of the
Sure.
art form we do are interlinked. Yeah.
Well, your work participating in our Shakespeare pieces just it blew me away. You are such a good actress. You have such a good feel for that work, and I would be amazed if you wouldn't excel in any kind of acting at all. You are really marvelous doing that work, and I have to say, anybody who's lucky enough to have you on a stage in front of them, they're in for a good show. You were really a very talented young woman. Let me ask you this. Um,
Sure.
when you know, when you go from being a poet that writes silently in her room or his room to a poet who performs, how do you see that difference? That it takes a lot of nerve. You have to be a bold writer to bring
Yeah.
your work out, and most people don't associate poets with bravery, with out there on the
Yes.
stage,
Yes.
but you do it so marvelously. How did you do that transition? When did that transition that you said, okay, I like what I write, but I want to share it?
I will say that because how that actually sparks, because all the while I've been thinking that poetry is just like meant for you to write. And I know of some of my friends who are also poetry writers, so they write and eventually they'll publish their work. And but then when it comes to spoken word poetry as like performing poetry, I only found out when, because I perform at Crack House Comedy Club, the open mic. And so happened like just a stone throw away, there is a poetry mic. So it's and then it's over there. It's just a short walk. So it's quite interesting. So when I found out that, oh, they have a poetry open mic, I was like, and how I know it is because a comedian wanted to go there and do his open mic. He wanted to perform to a new audience because sometimes you need the new audience. Because okay, if comedians, you can be performing often, but when you are in the same venue, there is a chance of a repeat audience. So that audience will be looking at you like, this person doing the same joke again. So so sometimes they need a break to like, I need to go and perform the same thing, but to a new audience to see how. So he decided to just go there and perform his comedy. And of course, he did very well. I happened to be like, hey, I wanted to go and see that venue that you're performing to. So I went. But the thing is, funny you should say, is like I can actually go in by trying saying that, hey, I can do my comedy there. But since he's doing comedy, why don't I just try my comedy as well? But funnily, on the first day of entering the spoken word mic, I already like written 2 poetry at home before going to the mic. So I just go there and then I just read. And in KL, the poetry is very lax one. That means if you memorize that, it's an added point because people can feel your emotions, everything. But when you feel that it's because sometimes our brain also like, unless you really make it a point to memorize, it's quite hard to memorize what we written. It's very funny. I don't know why we find it hard to memorize something that we write ourselves. So end up it's like most of the time they'll be carrying a book. So for me also I carry a book lah, and then I read, and then I'm like, hey, and everyone like, do you like my stuff? And that's when I'm like, oh, okay, so I can come here for my therapy. Yes, because there are times you need to balance the yin and yang. Yeah, like your art form. Like for comedy it's about being bulletproof. Yeah, it's like you're being bulletproof and you're just there to get the laughter, But then for poetry, it allows you to assess your vulnerable side. And I think it's very important for a performing artist to balance all the thing that you have lah, rather than just focus on one thing too much.
Well, I had a very funny experience that took me from poetry to comedy.
Oh,
Number one, although I write on a lot of serious topics, I try to put some humor in them. But
mm,
when I first started performing poetry in public, there was in my town. I lived in Miami at the time,
mm,
and there is a part of Miami that's very artistic. It's called Coconut Grove.
mm.
And I went to Coconut Grove and I see these people reading their poetry. And I thought, well, I have a lot of poetry. I should read some of mine. So the next week I went and I read my poetry. And they used to have poetry contests. It wasn't really a
Oh,
slam, but they would vote on which poet they liked the best, and there would be a poetry winner. Now, to me,
wow.
poetry is about speaking from the heart. I don't want to pick this poet versus that poet. I just want to hear
Yeah.
their work, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
but this was a contest, and oh, what the heck? So I'm doing a contest. Well, I won 3 weeks in a row, and on the
Wow.
third week, and I was writing humorous political poetry, environmental poetry, anti-war poetry, stuff like that. And this gentleman walks up to me and he said, "Listen, I work at the local radio station, and we're looking for someone to write a new radio show. Would you be
Mm.
interested in writing a radio show?" And now I know what he was thinking. He was thinking, okay, poetry show, that was his expectation. And I said, well, I'll do it on one condition. And he looked at me, wait a minute, I'm giving you a show. What are you putting conditions on it? And I said, well, let me write a science fiction comedy. Science fiction comedy? How do you jump from poetry to science fiction comedy? And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And he said, well, if you did it, what would you call it? And without even thinking, sometimes your mouth speaks ahead of your brain. My mouth said, well, it'll be called Martian Ambassador and the Captured Chorus. And he said, captured chorus? Why captured chorus? And I said, well, it's easy. I don't know who will come with me that day. So whoever I capture, they'll be on the show.
Oh my God.
And I ended up doing for a year a live hour of radio. It was a science fiction comedy. It was a lot of fun. So to me, my poetry is directly connected to my comedy.
Wow, that is impressive.
Well, when you started writing and reading your work aloud, performing poetry, um, were you writing about people? Were you writing about society? What were you writing about when you first started performing your work?
I think my first two work that I write that day, one is actually about courage. Yeah, having the courage in life. And another one is about my dysfunctional family. Yeah. So I mean, it originally started as a story, but then I actually break it up in verses and then just perform it. But the thing is, because it's something that is very close to my heart, so it's very easy for people to feel the anger, you know. And sometimes anger need not be loud. Anger can actually be very mellow, but it bites, you know, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it need not be like a loud voice, but then it can be like just turn, you know, the kind of stuff, and people will still like listen, you know. Yeah. So that's why I kind of think that some of them, like, wow, they say they got the feels from my poem. Yeah.
Well, we've learned a little bit about Juliana, the lovely writer and talented comedienne. How about if we hear some of your poetry?
Sure.
What would you like to
So
read for us? Anything you'd like.
okay, cool. So I think I will read one poetry and one new poetry. So let me dig my new
Fine.
poetry while waiting.
Okay.
Yeah. New poetry. New poetry is actually quite interesting. So I will read the new one first before going to the old one.
Okay.
So it's actually written in response to the Ukraine invasion. So it's called Ukraine Do It. Stump, numb, dumbstruck. These feelings permeate my soul like a sneak attack on my tailbone as I heard the news of the Ukraine invasion by Russia. The reason of invasion is unfathomable. Russia opines that Ukraine was a constant threat and Russia doesn't feel safe to develop and exist. This situation is bone-chillingly familiar. The relationship of Russia and Ukraine is just like my mother and I. When I was a child, I listened and followed everything mother asked me to do. No matter what I do, it is never good enough. Mother will sprinkle criticisms like salt to my wound that is constantly seeking validation. So I will always be her shadow, following her to the ends of the earth. When I grew up, I became independent. I managed to squeeze through the cocoon, flap my wings, and fly. My world expanded. I found my dream work. I found my circle of friends. I'm no longer a bonsai that is constantly being trimmed by my mother to fit into her pot of expectations. When mother knew that I'm rising up, she is deeply insecure. So she did her best to pull me back down to where she is. Every night, she invaded my peace of mind by degrading me, demeaning my chosen work, and dissing my fellow comrades. After 2 years, I decided to set myself free by fleeing away from her. I'd rather be a refugee than to be her prisoner so that I can develop and exist as my own person. Even when we love someone, it doesn't mean we need to compromise who we are and succumb to violation of boundaries. There is a Mandarin proverb, 本是同根生，相煎何太急. It means we grow from the same root. Why the rush to fry each other? Culturally, Russian and Ukraine are much more similar in culture than the ethnic groups within Russia itself. To see such an abuse happening within the family is utterly disheartening because even total strangers don't do that. Ukraine, since we share a strong kinship, we are sisters. I am telling you from the bottom of my heart, when you are unapologetic to be yourself wholeheartedly and grow exponentially in your journey, you will face lots of hardship bestowed upon you by insecure people. Mother Russia will not accept you for who you are and will do all she can to feed her insecurities, including draining your will to live, so that you can go back to be her bonsai. You may feel like you are trading honey on every step of your journey, but never ever give up because we, the world, are on your side. Ukraine, Ukraine, do it. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, very beautiful. Very beautiful. I really, that is so different a take than I've heard before. And I know I've written 3 or 4 pieces on it and I've focused on different aspects, but I really like the way you tied that to the family aspect. And I think that's really wonderful. You really made it such a human dimension, you know? Bravo, bravo. That's
Thank you
really
so much,
wonderful.
Richard.
Very nice. Have you performed this? I assume.
I have actually performed this once. I think in one of the poetry. It's like, remember the Poetry Global Network? They have many mics. I just don't
Right,
remember
right.
which mic.
Yeah.
And they have this theme whereby let's write. The theme is like Russian Ukraine. So for
Mhm.
me, I'm like normally normally most of my poetry are just like my own life and all. But the thing is, since I wanted to honor the theme of the show, so
Right.
I just say, okay, let me find out what I can do. But usually I like to tie it to my family member, give it a spin rather than to just do the same thing everyone is doing, because
Sure,
everyone can
sure.
just look at the same news and then we just extract the same thing and then we just write based on that. But when
Well,
you tie it to family or your own life, it gives a different spin to it. Yeah.
I think you did a marvelous job. I very impressed. I loved it. I thought it was very, very effective. Would you tell us another?
Definitely. My second poem is actually a very near and dear piece to me because it's a tribute to my special friend. Her name is Autumn. When I was a kid, I was an oddball. Nobody wants to play with me except Autumn. Autumn plays with me every day, have meals with me during recess, and went with me to the library to disappear into good books together. I cannot focus on my homework. Autumn coaxed me gently. Finish your homework fast, fast. Then we can play together. We finished our homework before school ended. Such maturity for a young child. Autumn is an enigma. The moment she landed her eyes on your phone number and identification number, she will call you every year on your birthday without the need to jot down. One day, some of my classmates told me, "Loser, you are unworthy and won't amount to anything in life." As the world around me crashes, Autumn came over to cup my ears, mouthing these words: "You are awesome. You are enough. You are love." Autumn is not perfect. Autumn can be hard to hang out with at times. Her obsession with order and straight lines in her homework, random echoing of people's words, peculiar way of clapping her hands can be very annoying. She disliked it when I hug strangers. Hey, you got to know the person first before letting them hug you, okay? In spite of her yin and yang, I enjoyed her company most of the time. She taught me how not to give a fuck and love myself no matter what. We studied hard and graduated. Now comes the time for us to find a job. I went for a job interview, aced it, and got hired. Congratulations, Juliana, you are hired. Thanks. Can you do me a favor? What would that be? Can you hire my special friend? Her name is Autumn. She is a hard worker with strong work ethics. My boss then said, "I'm sorry, we only hire you. Leave Autumn out of this." I was shocked. I was sad because Autumn is not just a friend. Autumn is a part of me. Autumn is the name of my autism. As an autistic, we are earnestly seeking acceptance. Hear me out. We are so unique that people find us so hard to understand that they label us as a puzzle and without and then when we are in fact the ones completing the puzzle. My nickname as a child is Jaja Binks, given by my own mom because I'm awkward and drop things often. People said that Jaja Binks is George Lucas' mistake, but I disagreed. Perhaps George is already factoring autism acceptance and neurodiversity to include us special people. One day, a friend asked me to park at a disabled parking spot. I said I can't because I don't have a disabled card. My friend then asked me, why didn't I apply? I said, I will never apply unless they change it from disability to different ability. The first two letters of autism is AU. AU is the symbol of gold in the periodic table of elements. Therefore, the inner world of autism, of an autistic, is gold. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you so
Bravo,
much.
bravo. Absolutely wonderful. Do you have one more you could share?
Yeah, so the poetry is called Unrecognition.
Okay.
Unrecognition feels like having my feet nailed to the ground, unable to move forward. The more I want to break free, the more it grips me at every toe, keeping me rooted to the ground, persistently reminding me to yield to my fate. Unrecognition feels like I'm being smothered by a pillow. I tried to breathe, but nothing goes in. I tried to yell, but nothing comes out. Eventually, I will be out of breath. My voice silenced to nothingness, calling me to yield to my fate. Unrecognition feels like I'm climbing the wall of a well. I saw light at the top, but as I tried to climb, the walls are shrouded with moss of cronyism, pushing me back into the deep cold ends of the well, coercing me to yield to my fate. I know that my time is up, when the curtains of my eyes can no longer hold back my liquid pearls from flowing out in the middle of the night. I decided to pull out all the nails that has been relentlessly gripping my toes. I decided to knock out the pillow that has been smothering me. I decided to tear off the moss that has been pushing me to yield to my fate. Walking with bloodied feet, breathing as though life was returned to me, yelling with boundless joy, climbing out of the well like an agile lizard, I will find a place that recognizes the light in me. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so very much. Juliana, you write remarkably. Very,
Thank you.
very lovely. Um, when you're asked by a young poet
Mm,
for guidance, should they
yes.
continue? They'd like to, but they're not sure. What do you say to a young poet who's wondering, is poetry a good path for a person?
For me, I feel that it's like regardless of what you do, regardless of what art you dabble in, you have to be patient. I think that's the most important thing because a lot of times we are too hard on ourselves. We expect that, oh, after doing it for one month, or either even a year, we thought that we should be getting like a special, on Netflix or anything. We thought that we should be earning a stable income from that. But unfortunately, the real life doesn't work this way because we all have to go through a learning curve. Instead of looking at it like, oh, I must make it at this time, I must, okay, because all my friends are doing well in 1 year, I need to be on the same pace as them. That's not necessary. It's like you have to follow your own pace because we all have our own way of doing things, and look at it as a way of finding your own path instead of following the tried and true path, which is okay, it's stable but it's boring, so might as well look at putting your own unique spin to it, and then find your own unique way to success. Because even myself, when I mentioned that I also wanted to quit comedy. Yes, but the thing is, because I'm having a less than mentality, that means I am lesser than my other comedians, which is why I wanted to quit. Because I don't, no matter how hard I work, I will never be as good as them. But when I reframe my thoughts to like, no, I'm not lesser than, I'm actually equal to them in my opportunity to find my own success. And I think that's the most important. That means that start to open a new path for you because you are different, everyone is different, and you can find your own way to success, and you define success in your own terms instead of, oh, I need to follow someone's path. Find your own way, find your own meaning, and just be patient, and then keep working on your craft every day, and you will definitely go somewhere.
Well, thank you so very much, Juliana. It has been a real delight to visit with you. I, it's just been wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Richard, for having me.
Okay. You have a wonderful evening.
You have a wonderful morning.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care.
Okay.
Well, it started, let's say, um, my first attempt in this kind of singing so-called poems was when I was 6. And well, I can't be ashamed of what I wrote there, because nobody can be ashamed of what one did when he or she was 6, for sure. But I have felt this need for as a very young person, that's for sure. And only I had to precise the way, the specificity of this need, and this came only much later, as I mentioned. Actually, I tried to express myself also with the help of image, with the help of sound, with the help of performance, and I tried to combine all these into a specific way of writing poetry. And I think that as a poet, you know it as well, that the most important for a poet is to define one's own style of making poetry, of being original, of not imitating, of creating something new,
Well,
or
I'll
at
tell
least
you,
of trying.
as a uh, working poet today, as a literary figure, Poets of the East is so proud to have you be part of the team that makes all this possible. When I think of the rich talent that you have brought here, it's just a wonderful thing. And my brother, not one poet has come to us who hasn't commented the insight that you bring, your experience with translation enriches your talent even more, but you are constantly signaled out as a poet of great depth and perception, and that didn't happen instantly. I know you studied literature and you've worked both as an editor and you worked as a translator, and you also work in film as well. You've done a lot of analysis of film. How did that part of your literary work begin? Was this in college you began to do film criticism and analysis?
I have to admit that I needed to work on this critical, analytical part of my work in order to understand poetry myself, to better understand poetry myself. Because one of my limits is that in order to understand something, I have to say something about it. I have to express this with words, with sentences. And that's what critics and analysts do. Therefore, the analytical and critical dimension of what I'm doing, I need to talk about something in order to understand that thing. Sometimes I'm criticized for this. Sometimes people say that there is, and I agree, there is something like an intuitional understanding, but intuitional understanding is individual. It's you for yourself. It's me for myself. In order to understand, in order to explain other ones, what do you feel, what do you want to express, you do need words. Therefore, I try to develop my this part of my work, this critical part, this analytical part of my work as they say in Europe now, literary artists, with quotes or not, take it the way you want. Comprising film, I made a PhD in film, in Central European film in Prague, and this only helped me to enrich my idea about poetry with the poetry of image, with the poetry of sound, with the poetry of plastic arts and combination of images.
Let me go ahead and ask you to shine that light of yours to present your lovely feathers, if you will, of your film analysis. Many Americans, even though their experience in cinema is rather parochial and American only, many of us have seen the film The Fireman, the famous Foreman film, The Fireman, or The Fireman's Ball, maybe it is. Could you just share some of your own insights into that piece?
Well, Fireman's Ball is a parabola about the political life in Czechoslovakia, actually more in the Czech part of Czechoslovakia in the late 60s, and in the same time a very tough attack to the pretty bourgeois dimension of the Czech nation as Miloš Forman was seeing it at that time. Actually, you know, that organizing committee of the ball, of the fireman ball, those old noble gentlemen, actually they were that time's Czech government. Each of them represented a politician, a ministry, a state secretary. One of them was even a former president of the communist Czechoslovakia. They even had gestures and expressions which used to belong to these respective politicians, like gestures by hand. We have to trust people. We have to trust people. Even repeating this kind of expressions, or their obsession with those young girls because they wanted to organize something like a Miss contest. Of course, they couldn't say Miss at that time in Czechoslovakia. It was called Královna krásy, the Queen of Beauty. So in order to be more communist, more popular, and it was among them a gentleman which was just like this, ridiculously clapping hands and moving head like this. This was actually a caricature of the former Czech president Antonín Novotný, considered as being the most stupid president Czechoslovakia has ever had, and he was also actually very well. It is a very ugly word, but he was obsessed with girls, and therefore this figure of him inside of that crowd, of that circle of girls, it was considered also a lèse-majesté crime for the time. Only the censors didn't have the proof that the director meant this within the film. Nevertheless, much worse was the presentation of, or the understanding of, the position of fireman in Czechoslovakia in that time, together with his, because there were three which wrote this screenplay: Miloš Forman, Ivan Passer, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name just now. Jaroslav Papoušek, and they had to undertake a tour throughout Czechoslovakia in order to explain they have nothing against firemen. That actually it was a parabola, it was a symbol, and it was about firemen there, well, in order to explain what was all about, they had to say it was about the political situation, but try to say it was about the political situation in a communist country, okay? So it was from bad to worse, you know? And in the same time, what nobody liked with this film was that Czechs were presented as completely unable to express solidarity, completely unable to express social cohesion, or something which could remind something like this. Everything if you remember, everything is stolen, and uh, they actually present no no understanding for that old guy which remained without that house. Usually people ask what that wonderful end of the film means, with the old fireman sleeping in the same bed and on the snow with that old guy whose house had burned. Actually, it was the uncertain future of that nation, the uncertainty, that surrealistic uncertainty of what was waiting to them, because the situation he presented there, it was something without any end, without any hope.
Well, thank you so much. I apologize for dragging you into doing some film criticism, but I think it shows the depth of your analysis, and that's why I wanted to let you shine one more way, my friend. Okay, so you wrote the drivel, you wrote the standard stuff, but you came to another understanding. Um, when you were still in college, I presume, university, while you started doing film criticism. Talk about your career when you left college.
You mean the film career or
Yeah,
the literary
uh,
one?
your career after school, after college.
Well, actually, I started as a mathematician. My first faculty was a faculty of mathematics and model theory, because of political reasons. I wasn't allowed to study humanist fields uh, because I was coming from a dissident family. Therefore, I could study only economical or technical fields. So my second faculty, uh, I followed it in the 90s after the fall of communism. This was film science, that means my old dream. And finally, uh, it was literature, and in parallel with PhD in film science in Prague, starting the new millennium, the year 2000. And paradoxically, or only apparently paradoxically, this PhD in film science helped me also to rediscover poetry in a much more profound and complex way than, well, 20 or 25 years ago, when it was only rhythm and singing, superficial rhythm and singing.
You want to tell us when you started taking your poetry seriously?
Well, I am ashamed to tell it, but I took my poetry seriously even in the time when it did not deserve to be taken seriously. Uh, I took it seriously permanently, but I have to admit that I think, I hope, it deserves being taken seriously starting from, let's say, 2012, 2013, like this, when I start writing in Czech. And actually, this helped me define a certain style of being myself a poet, of discovering my being a poet with the help of mocking these ridiculous formulas uh, in we use so much, and when which usually don't tell almost anything. Therefore, actually, I start writing poetries in planes while listening to those formulas. Please, uh, please switch your mobile phone to your plane mode. Please put your table into the horizontal position for the meal. Maybe 19% from the people in the plane didn't want to eat, but they had to execute this. So it is also a thing, I think, making fun of stupid formulas, making fun of stupid expressions. It's a way of writing poetry, of creating poetry.
we've seen different styles of poetry be fashionable. Some of us are warned over and over, what you write isn't fashionable. How do you feel about trends in poetry or adhering to either innovation or formulae? Um, is it a responsibility of a poet to please the critics, or should they follow their own heart?
I'm not sure you and I are going to solve this problem tonight. Uh, everybody is praising poets, artists, which follow their own way, even if in 99% of the cases they don't reach anything, because in order to be taken seriously, in order to be listened to, in order to be admitted as an artist, one has to do something according to what is stylish that very moment. I can't answer, Rick. I can't tell you what is better. Myself, I praise and I admire artists which follow their own way and which trust their own way. But in the same time, I have to admit, and I am aware of the fact they that they have all the chances not to reach anywhere. And openingly and really sincerely, I am a little bit in this category because writing in Czech and being a Romanian, it's like reading. It's like riding a car with closed eyes. But I feel this is my way, and I'm trying to find a way for myself. I'm trying to find a style and a place for myself on this delicate and unstable balance between a person living in one country and having a different language of expression.
Let me ask you one more question before we get into actually hearing your work. Many of us have found the positive side of COVID, that we've made new connections. We've established new forums to communicate, that poets have found a community on the globe that we didn't have before. Talk for a minute just about what you think about COVID's impact on the poetic voice.
I have to admit that, well, I don't want this to sound sarcastically, but this COVID period was one of the most depressive and in the same time the most fecund in my career. I think I wrote my best poems, my best texts during the COVID period. I made the best contacts. Actually, I met you, for instance. I met a lot of other great poets, great international poets during the COVID period, the COVID era, I can say, because we couldn't go out from our houses. So we went out online. And online, there were a lot of interesting people. It was also a lot of maculature. There were a lot of people which, well, weren't the best artists. But among them, there were also diamonds. There were also people from which I learned a lot and which helped me very much with better understanding the idea of poetry and extending this idea as well.
Wonderful. So
I think you are.
we've talked a little bit about the wonderful world of Mircea. How about some poetry, sir?
I will be honored and privileged, sir. And if you allow me, I will present some of my latest works. Um, the title is of the first poem I'm going to read is The Missing Link, Le Chaînon Manquant. In original, the title is Le Chaînon Manquant. In translation, is The Missing Link. As usual, translation by Judith Antal. You offer me your smile. You offer me your kiss. You offer me your lips. You offer me your cheeks. You offer me your arms. You offer me your legs. You offer me your breasts. You offer me your body. You offer me your beauty. You offer me your virginity. You offer me your femininity. You offer me your love. You offer me your sweetness. You offer me your tenderness. You offer me your gentleness. You offer me yourself. You offer me your everything. You offer me your all. You ask me, what else do I need? You ask me, what else do I want? You ask me, what else do I expect? Why don't I take? Why don't I accept? Why don't I enjoy your smile, your kiss, your lips, your cheeks, your arms, your legs, your breasts, your body, your beauty, your virginity, your femininity, your love, your sweetness, your tenderness, your gentleness, yourself, your everything, your all. You say that a lot of people would be happy to be in my place, would be happy to be offered as much as you offer me. You mentioned that after offering so much, it is normal for you to expect something in return. You stress that you don't understand. Why am I still silent? Why am I still not expressing my whole love for you? Why am I still not clearly stating you're definitely the one I will select, elect, pick, favor, prefer, want, take, go for, choose? I am aware that in a certain way, you are right. Yes, I shouldn't be silent. Yes, I should clearly express myself. Yes, you are certainly that kind. Someone would definitely select, elect, pick, favor, prefer, want, take, go for, choose. Yes, you offer me a lot. Yes, you offer me all you can offer. You offer me your all. Yes, according to your judgment, there's nothing more I could expect. However, I do, for you offer me only all you can offer, for you offer me only your all, and what I need from you, all I need from you, is the only thing you aren't able to offer, the freedom of selecting, electing, picking, favoring, preferring, wanting, taking, going for, the freedom of choosing you.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely. How
Thank
about
you.
another, my brother? How about another?
Thank you very much. I will continue. Silent Night 2, also translated by Judith Antal. I'm not going to be your Christmas tree. I won't allow you to cut me off my roots with your human aches, to steal my dead body from the forest, to bring it to your warm and cozy human home, to fasten it next to your warm and friendly human oven, to put on it some immaculately white human dress, to make it your beloved human bride, and to replace my mortal wild existence in the pagan forest with a human life that may become immortal after my next human death, if I manage to avoid human temptation to what you call human sin, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be your Christmas tree. It's about time for you to learn. Christmas tree, it's a gender neutral, not a feminine, and for sure not a common known. A Christmas tree just doesn't feel like being decorated according to your taste. A Christmas tree just doesn't feel like being decorated. A Christmas tree just doesn't feel like being someone's Christmas tree. A Christmas tree just doesn't feel like being a Christmas tree at all. For you, a Christmas tree is just a pretext for keeping alive the illusion of being able to make something more beautiful than it was. But how could you embellish something you killed in order to embellish? How could dead beauty add beauty to a beauty that is already dead? I'm not going to be a Christmas tree. I won't become the topic of some stupid human stories of yours. And if on Christmas Day you find me lying down on the sidewalk, buried under the snow that has fallen the whole night on the little square at the final stop of the city train, remember, I have never been your Christmas tree. for I choose to be someone else's. Nevertheless, if you really care so much about Christmas trees, you can always buy yourself an artificial one and order a personalized Christmas during the first week of January before the death of the three wise men. Do we still have time?
Yes, please, one more.
Thank you. Paint or your self-portrait made by me. You have never been mine. However, your picture in my computer was mine for sure, at least at the very beginning of its time, when it presented exactly your image, the way you were looking just then, that very moment when you accepted being taken a picture, that unique ephemeride that inspired you into not being afraid of becoming immortal. However, little by little, I began to forget those uniquely specific features of yours, the way you used to look like that one and only moment, and I wasn't able anymore to imagine you exactly, not to mention the way you should have certainly changed during all that time. Therefore, I started to work on your picture in my computer with different graphic programs in order to make it more likely to your probable or at least hypothetical, however, to me completely unknown current look of yours, or at least just in order to make it, let's say, more credible. You have never been mine. And now, even what used to be that time, your picture in my computer became some image into which I had already invested too much of myself for continuing to pretend it is still depicting you. And yet, it contains from you so much, and at the same time, so little, that I am aware it can't even be mine anymore, how your picture in my computer used to be at the beginning. But there's something I know for sure. The computer is definitely mine. I get into it with the help of a password which only I know. And you will really be mine only when I forget that password forever.
Wonderful, wonderful. What an interesting metaphor. Many of us keep pictures of our loved ones in our computer, but I think you took it into a new direction. Very interesting, my friend. Wonderful work
Thank
as
you.
always. Always wonderful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this, Rick. It's my privilege. Thanks a lot.
Well, my brother, on behalf of myself and let me just say, as part of Poets of the East, you do us proud, sir. You do us proud.
Thank you very much. I feel I'm humbled and I modestly thank you very much for the chance Poets of the East represented for me and for a lot of other poets. Thank you very much, Rick Spisak. I am
Okay.
really
Well,
impressed.
we will talk again soon. Thanks again, brother. Bye bye.
All the best, Rick. Bye bye.